Hello everyone and welcome to an online chess class where today we're going to learn another very popular opening that is called Sicilian Defense, and today we're going to be looking at this particular opening from the white's point of view. Before we start the lesson, I have to make sure that the audio and the video quality is fine. So if anyone in the chat could say hello to me and just confirm that everything from technical point of view works well, and then we can proceed with the lesson, guys. I see that the public is slowly gathering. I'm gonna type in the chat. Say hi to everyone. I don't bite, I promise. It always takes a couple of minutes for people to come. Feel like at home, because you are at home. That's the good thing about having classes online, right, guys? So I think when I see myself and I turn on the audio, it seems like everything seems to be working very well. I would like to remind those of you who already joined that I like these lessons to be highly interactive. Please participate in the lesson by giving answers as well as questions just related in the chat. I will try to take a look at most of them. Sometimes there are so many of you that chat goes on and on and on, and I'm in no time to answer all, but I will really try to look at especially YouTube at Chess24 chats and give you as comprehensive answers as I could. So perhaps first guess is what I have prepared today. What type of Sicilian do you think we're going to look at today? The Sicilian opening starts when white plays the move e4 and black responds with c5. So Matthew is saying hello. Very nice to see same people joining already, not the first time. People are slowly gathering. I'm very happy with that. Matthew, could you please let me know in the chat that everything from technical point of view works well? Can you hear and see me well? I hope you do. Don't want to feel lonely and be talking to myself. Hello, Bekshnarzar, if I pronounce that well. It's even easier, I think, to pronounce your last name for me. Jafar, Berkay, hello everyone. Very nice. Okay, Nikos is saying all good. So today I have prepared something special, and I hope to change most of your repertoire against the Sicilian defense. I understand that the most popular way of playing the Sicilian would be with the move knight to f3 in this position, which is called the so-called open position, open Sicilian, and afterwards we're trying to hit the center with the typical pawn move to d4. However, objectively, all the good openings like Sicilian or e5 against e4 theoretically are equal for black. At some point black does equalize. I want to change your repertoire, and I want you to give me a shot and trying to convince you to play 2c3. Now, this is another type of Sicilian that also requires a lot of theory, but not as much as the typical knight f3 one. Also, especially my students that are below 1800 and they're just newcomers to my lessons, when I ask them what your preparation goes deeper in as a Sicilian player with the black pieces, they're always referring that they're doing 90% of work against knight f3 with the black pieces, and they view c3 as some kind of sideline. Well, there are news for all of you that c3 probably is not just a typical sideline with not good results for white, but actually it's perhaps the second main line, and I can see that throughout the history it has gained popularity. At some point some really top level players start playing c3, then it gets popular, then they stop playing c3 and they go back to knight f3, and really the world champion and the elite players in the top 20 are usually dictating the fashion, and we amateurs, mere mortals, are just copying this opening repertoire of those. So thank you, Berkay. They're saying I look handsome today. I try my best. I also try to be as instructional as I can. Hello, Shuvo. Very nice to see you here. I hope you're doing well. Hello to Eccentric Horse and Aditya. Eccentric Horse, first you always have to say hello, right? Good evening, good day. and then you can proceed with the questions, right? I would be very happy to take a look at the first question. Isn't there a variation where you play c3 after playing knight f3? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. c3 perhaps gives less options in one way, and knight f3 followed by c3 is also playable, definitely. So in this position, there are two main moves, and we're gonna take a look at both. So either black plays d5 or black plays knight f6. So we'll try to allocate 30 minutes or 40 minutes for d5 and 20 minutes for knight f6. Very nice, Eccentric Horse. Hello, Gaurav. Maxar is saying hello, Magnus. Yeah, hello to you too. So let's first take a look at d5. Takes on d5, queen takes d5, and white is playing d4. When we're playing C3 Sicilians, we're never afraid of getting isolated pawn. In general, just like every isolated pawn, it has space advantage and central control advantage to white. So we're getting better pieces in the middle game. Endgame chances are very high for black, but we're making a claim that either we're going to change the structure along the way, or black is not going to survive the middle game because of our superiority of the piece activity. So a lot of times if pawn is on e6, at some point white could hope for d5 break when we're simply exchanging the isolated pawn and thus getting rid of our weaknesses. One of the most common ways to play for black at the club level level is to put immense pressure against d4, and that's not the main line, but I want to take care of that first. So black is considering knight c6 and pinning the knight on f3, basically putting massive pressure on this pawn on d4. So knight c6, knight to f3, and we're not scared of the pin. Thank you, Gaurav. There is a player that probably dislikes me. Maybe I told him something bad or something, or I stole his cookies. He put a dislike on this video. Apologies if I stole your cookies or something like that. I promise I will do my best to make it up and provide highest quality chess lesson that I can provide today. Okay, so after bishop to g4, we could just be playing bishop to e2, and we would be getting to the main line that we would be looking at a bit later on. However, there is an ambitious try for white, and we will emphasize on how sometimes black can be punished for allowing this pawn break d5. So we're going to play the move knight to c3. A little bit weird and a little bit sharp, but it turns out that this move is available for white. Now, the first question is, what happens if bishop takes f3? Now, in this position, we can play a couple of ways. The first way is the most straightforward. We could be taking the queen on d5. Black will be taking on d1. We would be giving a check on c7, very forcing line. Say king to d7, attempting to trap the knight, which would be in the corner. After knight takes a8, black needs to defend the bishop, which was on h5. And here white has a couple of moves. For example, one of them would be bishop to f4, d5 is another try, and things get messy, but it turns out that it's objective equality with maybe slight edge for white. Now, after bishop takes f3, most of the people, they like to be taking with the pawn. One, black would be taking on d4, queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and here white plays a good move, knight b5. The only one move that really attempts to get an advantage for white, with a similar idea of giving the check on c7. So knight to c2 could follow for black. Again, the most straightforward line, easy to calculate. King to d1, and after knight takes a1, we're just aiming to hit the pawn on a8. And it turns out that these positions are very interesting to play. White has a damaged pawn structure, but way easier development, and that's why people prefer white here. Black's pawn structure, again, is super solid, but it's really not very much clear how exactly to take care of the king side and the king. Whereas for white, it's pretty straightforward. The squares for the pieces are easy to be found. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of grandmasters like to play knight c3 instead of bishop e2. But if you don't prefer these lines, then bishop e2 would be the go-to idea to go to a calm game. I will always try to take a look at the chat as much as I can, and I'm welcoming all the questions. Thank you, Gaurav. I'm very good at Savi. Very nice to see you. Yes, eccentric horse. In the latest position, white also has a bishop pair. We have an international master in the chat. Very nice that I even attract such a strong level players. I will just try to hypnotize you with my voice, because I can't maybe hypnotize you with my moves. They're all easy to guess for you, but I will do my best to make it comfortable, and perhaps you could enjoy this short chess lesson with me together. So first I want to show you a punish of and the dangers in the position of black, and perhaps this will inspire you to play and try the C3 Sicilian, where black tries to play it like Scandinavian style, queen a5, and run into this d5. And here this position is practically already lost for black. And you wouldn't believe how many people have entered this position with the black pieces among the top level, okay, not the top level players in the world, but I'm speaking about grandmasters and international masters. So seemingly black could castle, and especially if players with the black pieces have never seen anything like that, it could be hard to evaluate because black seem to be developing initiative as well. King is in the middle. For white, pins are along the both diagonals and the d file. But white plays a very typical move, bishop d2, which gets him off the two weak pins immediately. The pawn is no longer pinned, so we renew the threat of d takes c6. And also we're pinning our knight, which was over here. And after knight b4, and we're kicking the knight again and sacrificing a pawn, I have the first exercise for you. It is white to play and win. There are a couple of moves that win, but one wins the most straightforward and easier way. Win means probably winning material, as checkmates are rarely seen this early, right? So white to play. Greg Techno, thank you for your question. My online rating in Blitz would be 23-2400. And in the over-the-board tournaments, I never played, and I don't have that experience in the rated ones. No title holder here, just a coach who does this for a living for the last 8 years. I'm very proud to say that, as I'm very happy doing this, teaching chess for a living. What to play here with the white pieces, guys? Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much. Eccentric horse, as always, sharp as attack. The move here is knight a4, and we seem to be trapping the black's queen. So black's queen has no squares to go. They could try bishop takes f3, and we would just take with the pawn. We don't want anything related to queen takes f3. And here, black's queen can only have queen c7, after which we have rook c1. So that's why castling is dangerous. A move to remember is bishop to d2. Black in the game played knight e5, and nevertheless, I'm going to show you how white can develop the initiative over here. So bishop to b5 check, knight to d7, queen to b3, a typical move where white's queen is aiming at both b7 and f7 pawns. Knight to f6, this is a GM game, guys. Knight to e5, attacking the knight which is pinned. Rook to d8, castles. Black plays queen c7, and after d6, black resigns. Who would believe that this was a grandmaster game? Queen f7 is the threat, and takes on c7. So if we know the theory, if we know how to develop the initiative, as you can see at the highest level, if opponent tries to play something weird or doesn't know the theory, even grandmasters can be losing this in 13 moves, right? Which is an insane number, I have to say. And it's without a typical like piece blender where they just put a queen on a hanging square. Gorav, I have to say that if you're playing C3 Sicilian, it's more about ideas than the concrete memorization. But of course, all the Sicilians are very fighting opening. And if you're playing e4, yes, one has to input the work, but I have a solution for you, buddy. Play bishop e2, which is going to be the main line. And you could just change the move order, and then it's a little bit calmer. Chess player one-on-one. I'm not gonna do banter blitz, I think, for chess 24. I'm more of a coach style than a player. I'm not feeling very confident when playing blitz because I do it like once a month or once 2 months. But I do it, as I said, online. I'm trying to maintain it at 2300 or so. But the first games after a month, oh my god, right? I prefer rapid and classical, of course, if I can, but I think that for banter blitz, there are many more stronger players than I am. So better I will continue doing what I do best, right? Carlos, yes, I would say that it's weird that sometimes grandmasters play bad games, like in this one, but they're still human beings. And I always like to say that if, say, a player is 2500 in the openings that he does know, if he's playing something that he does not know, he might be playing for just candidate master strength, like 21, 2200. Like imagine a guy plays e4 all his life and he's a GM, and then he plays d4 and ends up in Benoni or King's Indian, right? He might just be playing for 2000, 2100, and that's how perhaps these games could occur, right? Now, let's take a look at the at a typical idea quickly for the black pieces, again in the same line with d5. We have takes on d5, queen takes d5, d4, knight to c6, same pressure against the d4 pawn, knight f3, and now instead of playing bishop to g4 and pinning our knight, we're gonna observe takes on d4, and e5. And here I have a question. What do you think white should we be playing here? More about the ideas than memorization. I always try not to make it just move by move, but share ideas that are easier to remember. Thank you, Gorav. Thank you very much. What should we guys be playing here with the white pieces? I think that my objective as a coach for you today during this 1 hour is going to inspire you to take a look at the C3 Sicilian. I will take care of the couple of main lines and give you a massive amounts of ideas just so that you would get used to the basic and foundation of the C3 Sicilian. And if you will feel that that's the positions that you like, you can investigate it further. By any means, it's impossible to teach you in an hour this complex opening to the level where you be comfortable at playing it against anyone, right? But I'm gonna give you main ideas, and you should be feeling that you understand what it is about. And then if you want to investigate it further, you could observe the opening explorer and work out the move order, and you will know the main plans and ideas. And we have a couple of suggestions. The only move here is really knight c3, and it's very typical, as you saw already, with bishop g4. When they're threatening to take on d4, we play knight c3. And so knight c3 is always a move that we have to consider under pressure. One thing that I didn't mention is why black in general in the main line avoids to take on d4 early is because they don't want to allow knight c3 when the pawn is usually not on c6 or close to it. Not all the time, but the drawback of giving this isolated pawn for white very early is that knight could come to c3. So as you will see in the main line, blacks keep it like that for as long as he can until knight c3 is no longer something that black is afraid of. So we play knight to c3, and here they have a couple of moves. Again, if we take on e5, then this endgame is something that I find comfortable for black. Castles long should be good. So after knight c3, they play bishop to b4, and that's the only move. Like, if you retreat with the queen, come on, you're gonna run into same d5 tricks again at some point, right? So d5, and again, bishop b5, and similar initiative that we saw should be sufficient. So bishop to b4 is played, and here we play bishop to d2. We would like to capture back on c3 with the piece. So we have, as the queen is hanging, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3. Again, if pawn takes knight takes, white is more than comfortable. I feel like white is much better here. With open center, the only evaluation, the main factor that we're evaluating is the piece activity. As there are no pawns, it's just symmetry. It's called open center when there are no pawns. And again, just take a look. Knight on d4, active. A bishop on c3, aiming at g7. And from all of this, queen is also perhaps misplaced on d5, could get hit. And that's one of the reasons why white is much better here. So usually people play e4, and white continues playing very actively. Knight d2 is possible, but knight e5 is a typical idea that you also will see in the main lines. It prepares knight to bishop to c4. So here black has nothing better than taking, and taking. If they take on d1, we're very welcoming this, of course. Again, space advantage, pawn is weak, and we lead the development and activity. So they play knight to e7, and here is a typical, again, idea. Queen e4 check. This is white's main move, and the idea of this move is to allow rook to come to d1, and also put the queen on the a3 f8 diagonal, and preventing black from easy castling if he moves the bishop, right? If he moves the knight, because after, say, bishop d7 and queen to b4, now they cannot castle because e7 is hanging, right? And it also prepares rook to d1. So that's the goal of this move, queen to a4, right? First, get the queen on the long diagonal, prevent black from castling easily. 2, getting rook to d1. Ideas versus memorization. We have to find logic, guys, in the opening, and then it's just easier to remember it. Exactly, Leonard Smith. So I always emphasize ideas over lines, right? You have to find logic in the opening, right? So here, say bishop d7, queen to b4, and that's one of another lines how we could play if black plays this early e5. Now let's take a look at the main line. So e4, c5. Now let me make sure that... Now the main line with the pressure on the pawn. So the absolute main line here is going to be knight f6, which is more positional. Quickly, let's rush through the main line if they apply pressure on d4. So we're playing knight to f3, bishop to g4, and remember I was saying you could play bishop e2 previously, as in that line we already could have played knight to c3, but if you play bishop e2 there, you would just transpose into this specific line. So takes on d4, and this time black is in time to play e6. So they're less scared of this knight c3 and d5. That's what I was referring to, that black delays taking on d4. As if they take too early, they allow this knight to come to c3, followed by d5 a lot of the times. Also an idea for black if you're ever playing this from black's point of view. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways to play this with white. h3, bishop to h5, and most of the time we still go for this main idea, d5. Now, what's the idea of d5? We want to develop the initiative, which is with a subsequent knight to d4, exchanging the bishops, taking on e2 with the queen, and preventing black from castling. So this pawn sacrifice is very typical in these positions. Let's analyze that. We have a question. So instead of e6, someone is asking if bishop takes f3. I think that if we take with the queen, then we have this typical queen takes bishop takes c6 followed by queen d4. Maybe I went a little bit too fast. Takes, queen takes d4, and now bishop takes c6, removes the defender, and white wins the queen, right? And otherwise, queen is hit, right? Hope that answers your question. Let's go back to the game now. h3, bishop to h5. And there is also a question about g4. In this specific position, I mean, g4 is a playable move as well. So black would play bishop g6, and you're just taking a little bit calmer approach. This doesn't promise an advantage for white, but it's definitely playable as well. You're just playing standard isolated pawn position where the main plan is d5. So I would imagine queen b3 is one of the moves we should be playing. Black, on the other hand, tries to establish a good grip on the d5 square, knight f6, knight e7. As you can see, many players, not people, are preventing d5. So also, especially in the blitz, that's playable. But this d5 is what I want to emphasize on, as that's the idea that transposes for many C3 Sicilian lines. So watch this. Takes d5, knight d4. Right. So first we're discovering the attack on the bishop, right? So if knight takes d4 was to happen, after bishop takes h5, we're more than happy. I mean, this is just insane initiative, I think, for us, right? Castles, and already see very good compensation for the pawns in the activity. Black's king is in the middle. Castling there is really dangerous, I think. This is still playable for black. I'm not saying it's not, but white has a compensation. More interesting it is if black takes on e2, which most of the players do, as that gives black the highest chances to hold the equality. And after queen takes e2, we have bishop e7. And here it depends on what do you want. If you don't want to sacrifice a pawn, you can investigate those other lines. If you like the initiative and activity of the pieces, then white has compensation here. So for example, take c6, and castles, and both players are happy about something, right? Many games have followed that. Not easy to develop for black. If knight f6, you cannot castle. White, on the other hand, just plays versus the king, tries to develop the initiative and also tries to attack the center. So bishop e3, rook c1, rook e1 are the ideas. Easy game for white, I would say. Easy to make moves. In blitz, in any time control, I'm playing white here all day long. Players aren't people. Just player, yeah. All right, so let's take a look at the absolute main line in the d5 Sicilian. And the absolute main line is really not trying to establish attack against this d4 pawn, and players are just playing knight f6. So just positional, calm, and black has the best chances for equality, perhaps here. I'm not an expert on this, but by my analysis and investigation, I came to this conclusion that knight f6 is the most popular line. Also, less trouble for black and no hopes for losing very quickly. Garab is saying he's playing knight f3 open Sicilians. If you do like what you see today and those positions fit your style, you can investigate, and c3, just know this, that c3 is no inferior to knight f3. So whether you play c3 Sicilian or knight f3, objectively same advantage goes for white. 0 if black plays perfectly, right? But if you don't like and you don't feel comfortable in them, there are two reasons why. First of all, that's not your style. Two, which is the most common reason, you don't understand this yet, right? And it requires more analysis, as this is very complex, and Sicilian is something that is complex in general, as this is the first go-to defense against e4. If you're playing the most ambitious opening in chess, you better investigate it, and it requires more effort than in others, perhaps. So white is just playing knight to f3, easy to remember, same move was played in the previous lines. Bishop to g4, bishop e2, white plays exactly same moves. e6 and h3, always a useful tempo, as you never know when you want to play g4. And black plays bishop to h5. Now here, white is not scared, and many people would be thinking that c4 perhaps is the go-to move. It doesn't bring white anything significant, and black is not scared of that. Say queen goes to the very back, not here how to continue from here. Like say queen to b3, I could imagine we want to hit the pawn on b7, then d4 drops, queen takes b7, knight to d7, knight takes d4 is very forcing line, and I think that what black is getting out of this is amazing initiative, right? And I don't think that it's worth such pawn grabbing. Remember that after c4, black could also go queen to d7, and then you don't have the same ideas of queen b3, queen b7. Maybe worth a try for white, but nothing spectacular is waiting for us out there. If you're playing this with black, any kind of Sicilian, then perhaps this is a must-known idea that you wouldn't be scared of, as if you don't know this over the board game, you might be dedicating like 20 minutes to analyze if that's something you're not scared of. So white castles, knight to c6, and bishop e3 is a very, very important idea for white, as now we're threatening to take on c5. Now we could also investigate after castling the move c4, and here I can recommend a move queen to d7, because this queen indirectly is going to aim at the white's king side. An idea worth of remembering: a lot of times white has castled and black has not. There is a typical sacrifice. We're trying to open up the position and attack black's king, which is in the middle. And now after say takes, we usually want to play g4 and then play g5, restrict the black's knight off f6 so that we could remove the defender of the d5 square. So here queen of d7 is watching over g4, and these tricks never work because of bishop takes g4 and say lines like that where black is just winning completely, right? So just deadly attacking h1, bishop d6, white cannot hold this. So here perhaps after white castles, queen d7 is a nicer retreat against c4. Now after bishop e3, it forces black pretty much to take on d4, as we're threatening maybe to take ourselves otherwise. So c takes d4. If you want to play the exchange Ruy Lopez style, you could take with the knight, where we have pawn majority on the king side and the possibility of creating on the queen side, of the possibility creating a pass pawn in the endgame, which is an outside one. So objectively this is equal, but I prefer white and the endgame, as it's just easier to push that queenside majority, and this is one of the go-to and main plans in the C3 Sicilian for white as well. Eccentric horse, I'm not the one that is picking the topics. So if there's gonna be a topic on King's Gambit, I would love to do that, but Chess24 is suggesting the topics, and I just copy and do the streams on those, right? So I myself, I am not the C3 Sicilian player, but I had to prepare for this stream, and I did. Believe me, I prepared for a very long time, and now I believe that I would want to switch to C3 maybe from knight f3 and give it a shot. So it's also possible just to take c takes d4, which is the main line, and we're playing a typical isolated pawn position where white has better middle game chances and black probably has a winning endgame. So for example, bishop to e7, knight to c3, and one of the main ideas to remember for black, as this is the absolute main line, is that queen is comfortable on d6. So the only scared part about queen on d6 is that knight could come to b5, but then queen could just go back to say b8 or d8, most probably b8, and then the knight looks awkward. Like it doesn't do anything there and is gonna be kicked out. So knight b5 is a waste tempo for white as well. Now why queen d6 is because black needs rook d8 to put extra pressure on the pawn and to prevent the d5 pawn break. So queen d6 is an idea to remember, as this square doesn't come naturally to mind perhaps, and most people would go back to d8 or d7 maybe. So here queen b3 is usually tried, castles, and then just typical middle game isolated pawn position, and everyone is happy, right? Very fighting equality is here. Now you might be wondering, of course, what happens after queen b7, but here there are just typical ideas of rook b8 and maybe rook takes b2 subsequently. So white cannot be winning a pawn over here. Hello Herbie, my name is Kestony. Julius is just the sponsor. Aniket is asking, what do I play against e4? So since I'm a chess coach, I pretty much know the basics and intermediate theory of all the openings, or almost all the openings. But I personally, my main weapon is Caro-Kann, and my second main weapon is the French defense. Very similar openings. But I could also play some Sicilians. I could play e5. I could play Philidor as well. Thank you, guys. It's so nice to see you're also active, and if you have any chess kind of related questions, I would really be happy to share my experience and knowledge about what I know. Try to use me as your personal chess coach during these times, and between the lines and between the games, I do take a look at the chat, and really happy that you're so active today. Yeah, Leonard, Philidor is getting more popular. Dubov is playing that. I see nothing wrong with the opening, as Dubov says. If you thought that an opening is really bad, you wouldn't be playing it, right? So there is something to it, and it creates imbalances, and it's a play for a win. So if I'm trying to outplay my opponent and play for a win, Philidor is one of the first openings that are on my choice if I'm playing weaker opponent. If I'm playing a very strong opponent, I'm gonna play what I know best, or some e5, just super solid. Copycat opening is perhaps not the best, because symmetrical positions are also dangerous, because you're down without any kind of counterplay, right? Now, I would like to take a look at the main line of knight to f6, and perhaps this is the second branch, the second main move that you're going to face. It's knight f6 here. So white is pushing the pawn on e5. Black goes knight to d5, and we're solidifying the center with d4. C takes d4. If you wanna, you can investigate an interesting gambit of knight f3, followed by ideas like bishop c4. We're gonna play c takes d4. And now one of the ways to play this, it doesn't matter if they play really knight c6 or d6, usually it transposes. We're gonna take a look at d6 lines, and we're gonna take a look at e6 line. All right, so one of the ways to fight for this for black is d6 and try to undermine the white's space advantage by attacking that. But really, white is not afraid of right now black taking, as we're maintaining the pawn on e5. We're opening the attack against the knight, and we're having that space advantage, which we can enjoy, and white is better. Now, white plays knight to f3, very comfortable development. So, Eccentric Horse is asking, why do I like French? So, I like French. I'm gonna just drift away for a second to another opening. The whole idea of it is that I like to play French lines when I'm forcing white to play e5. And if you look at this objectively, white has long-term space advantage. Remember that my first opening, by the way, is Caro-Kann. But okay, French, why do I like it? White has long-term static space advantage, but black develops the initiative first, and he is the first one to develop. So c5, the only move is c3, and then knight c6, queen b6. I am the one that is developing the initiative. And if you know how to maintain it, that's what I like about the French, right? So it's same with the lines where they play knight to c3, I play knight to f6. I'm waiting for e5, same thing will happen. I fight it with c5. If they play it with bishop to g5, I play bishop to e7. Again, you must play e5. And I just love these positions where I'm lacking that space, but I have huge counterplay, and I know all my plans of how to develop the initiative from here. So that's my answer, Eccentric Horse. Arun, you can play any opening you want as long as you investigate it, and objectively it's not bad. So if you're playing this like an opening with the white color, and if black plays perfectly and evaluation is 0, play it. If you're playing an opening with the black pieces and objectively, like it's no more than 0.7, 0.8 to white, and you know a lot and you feel that the positions are fitting your style, I am not against that. You don't need to play the first line. You can play Scandinavian if you want, if that's what you like. So let's investigate the Sicilian, as that's the still we have to cover the main line today. One more, and black is playing d6, knight to f3, knight to c6, and here a typical move for white is bishop to c4. We're being very direct and asking questions about the knight on d5, and if the knight drops back to b6, then we play bishop to b5. It's also playable bishop b3, very sharp bishop, aiming at f7, strong alternative, but bishop b5 is the main move. Now, after knight d5, what about taking on e5? As that might be something that you wonder. Now, all three moves are possible for white. Takes on e5, takes pawn takes, or bishop takes. I like to play bishop takes d5. This is the old line. Queen takes d5, knight to c3, again, typical idea from the previous Sicilians, right? Queen to d6, again, a typical idea. A knight b5 doesn't lead to anywhere. Here, it just leads to disaster after queen b4. d5 for white, and knight d4, takes, very forcing line. e5 usually, queen d3, and queen to d3, and double edge position. Black has the bishop pair, white has a pass pawn. Depending if you like it or not, you might choose some different lines. If you don't like it, you could investigate pawn takes or knight takes on e5. So the main line, and usually you're gonna face it 80% of the time, knight to b6, we're playing bishop to b5 and pinning the knight on the c6 square. And here, bishop d7 is a possibility for black. They're threatening knight to e5 discovered attack against our bishop. So white plays knight to c3 when the bishop now is guarded, and same discovered attack doesn't work. Takes on e5, takes on e5, and usually black develops with g6. After which, castles, bishop g7, queen e2, and white maintains space advantage as this is an easy pawn to defend, right? So rook can go to d1, and these kind of positions, white holds a small edge. But okay, white is slightly better. Someone is asking, Gaurav is asking, what is a candidate moves? Candidate moves are moves that are worth of consideration. Candidate moves are not necessarily the good moves or the bad moves. They're moves that are worth of considering. So in puzzles, those would be checks, captures, threats. In normal game, those would also include moves that are played based on just the known concepts. Develops a piece, castles, improves your position, makes your opponent's position worse. Moves, list of moves that are worth of considering. That's what candidate moves mean, Gaurav. I would appreciate everyone who is enjoying the stream and liking the lesson. If you can, please put a like on this video. That means a lot to me. That means that you're enjoying it. I would appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. So as we're back, I want to go from the start again, as that's what I like to do when we're drifting deeper in one of the variations. e5, knight to d5, just so that you would remember how did we get to there. d6, knight f3, knight to c6. Bishop c4, bishop attacks, the knight attacks the bishop, bishop pins, and here the main move is d takes e5. Now here there are a couple of moves, but knight takes e5 makes most sense, and we're just attacking the knight that is pinned the second time. White is developing the slight initiative. Bishop to d7, and now we're grabbing the bishop pair. So knight takes, queen takes, knight to c3, and threatening again. Same initiative, always watch at these d5 breaks. Black needs to stop it with e6, and okay, castles, bishop e7, and queen g4 is where I like white. So this is very popular line. Black is castling because after bishop h6 there is queen takes d4. So there are still no threats like that. We have usually takes, as there is too much pressure against d4. We have to give up our good bishop, but we give it up in order to get an attack. So say bishop h6, bishop f6, rook fd1, and with knight e4 next, white is enjoying the attack. Now, believe me, if this is one of the main lines, isn't that the most wonderful position I could dream of as white? Objectively, black is fine, white is slightly better. Of course, I made some inaccuracies that are, though, very popular inaccuracies for black, but very popular position, and white enjoys an attack, and I believe that a mistake could get black mated at any of the moves, and black's plan is very simple. Simplify, eat the d4 pawn, right? But I think we all would pick white. Thank you very much, Nikos. Use me as your chess coach during these lessons. I know that today I had to make a video on an opening that is very complex, and there is a lot of moves, sharpness, memorization. I try to give you ideas over memorization as much as I can. Remember that this is probably one of the most complex openings in chess, so it's hard, but little by little, I'm opening eyes of this wonderful C3 Sicilian that I hope you can start playing. But remember that you could also ask me any chess-related questions, like Gaurav was asking about what is the candidate moves. I would gladly help you during these chess lessons as much as I can. Question: who in the top 10 would you like to get chess lessons from? I wouldn't like to get lessons from any of them because they're chess players. You have to differentiate between a chess player who's taking care about and thinking about himself most, because it's a sport. He's an athlete, sort of, brain athlete, and a chess coach, right? And there are many chess coaches and many chess players that are good at what they do, and they're terrible at the other. So say Dvoretsky. He was known as the best, perhaps, or okay, I don't want to say the best, but one of the best chess coaches in the world. He was only international master. He's a great player. He's a good player, but he was not in top, 100. He didn't make a grandmaster. You know what I'm saying? So he's not elite as a player. And so I'm pretty sure that most of the elite chess players would be not good, just to be fair to them, just not good at coaching. It's just two different things. As a chess coach, you have to prepare structure, first of all. You have to articulate yourself well. It's different things to be playing well and to explain the moves and how you think. And as I say, structure is the biggest key, right? So to answer your question, I wouldn't want lessons from anyone from the top 10. I would choose famous coaches, and I would name Dorfman, one of the players that I would love to have lessons from. And there are many others that are very good at teaching. Hopefully, I am also very good at teaching to a certain point. My niche is below 2000 FIDE. I love taking beginner 0 to like 1500 and making him into 2000. That doesn't mean I cannot be working with national masters or so, but my niche is really pre-2000 level FIDE, and that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years for a living. So hey, I gotta be pretty good at this, right? Hope that answers your question, Eccentric Wars. Gaurav, can we play good without proper opening knowledge? To a certain point, yes. At some point, opening knowledge is required. So I don't know where's the threshold, but it's better to know something about the openings if you're above 1500. Articom is saying that he knows a trainer who is 1500 and he managed to get multiple students to 2200, right? So that's what I'm saying, that guys, always distinguish between a good player and good coach. It's two different things, and all of the chess coaches and the players will agree with me. I bet if you take top 10 player in the world and you ask them if I'm right about saying that it requires completely different things and that those players wouldn't be good at coaching, they would agree with me, right? And it's same with everything, basketball, football. Take Jose Mourinho. Do you really think he's good at football playing? But he is good at coaching. Phil Jackson in the NBA, 11 rings. Okay, he was an NBA player, but there are many exceptions to that. Pankar is asking if Magnus is the best of all time. I wouldn't say he for sure that he is the best. I would say he is one of the best, because it's arguable. If you say Magnus is the best, then you say that there is no way Bobby, Fischer, Karpov, or Kasparov are better. But if you have doubts, then you say one of the best. I think it's fair, right? Now, in terms of longevity and dominance, we cannot still say if Carlsen is the best, because there are still years to go, and I think once his career is finished, then we can evaluate. Like, he might be champion for next 20 years, then he's for sure the best, right? But remember, Gary was top 1 for 20 years. So did he surpass Gary Kasparov yet as the greatest chess player of all time? There is a debate for that, right? There are opinions on both sides. Okay, so perhaps one latest line that we can take a look at in similar Sicilian is when black plays e6. So knight to f6, e5, d4, c takes, e6. So in the previous positions, we looked at what happens if black plays d6. Okay. Knight to f3, very easy to remember as we are playing the same moves. D takes bishop c4. Again, very easy to remember, because in against both d6 and e6, there is same move order for white. Now, be aware, not play bishop d3, you run into knight b4. That's kind of suspicious. So bishop c4 is also easier to remember. Knight to c6, remember these ideas, I guess. If knight b6, then we drop the bishop back and we make an argument that we force them to waste a tempo, so you can waste our tempo as well. One, like, I guess the main moves are these again. So black usually plays knight c6, castles, bishop to e7, and now a move that is new, queen to e2. There are many moves in that position. You could be playing a3, rook e1. You could play bishop d2, knight to c3, many moves. But here I give you a new move, queen e2. The purpose, ideas, right, is to defend e5 and prepare rook d1, and sometimes queen goes to e4. So maybe at some point we want to play queen e4 and build this battery, right? And I think most importantly we support e5 and we get rook to d1, where we're placing the rook on the same file as the opponent's queen. Always useful. Someone is saying they play c3 because it leads some out of theory. Of course, that is not necessarily meaning that there is no theory. There is less, but it's just because in open Sicilian there is so much theory. It's insane. After c3 is just a lot of theory, but not insane, right? Who just joined? I would welcome you to say hello in the chat. I see that there are new people. I don't bite, I promise. Also, if you're enjoying this video lesson, I would appreciate if you can put a like on this video. That means a lot to me. Thank you very much, guys. Gautam is asking, how can one think more deeply about his/her position in the game? Is it just practice, or need a deeper understanding of the game itself? So usually when players are playing these middle games at the high level, they already know all the ideas. So they have prepared them at home up to like move 20, 25 ideas, right? Now, as you're learning and learning chess, you know that these ideas transpose. So for example, what you learned in the Scandinavian, and the Caracan, those same ideas might be applicable in, say, Nimzo Indian, Queen's Gam, completely unrelated openings, right? And later you get very good intuition, and even if you're out of book, you most importantly have to know your plan and what not to do, right? And then you just try to coordinate your pieces, press on one point or the other. And this question, I think, is the same as how to improve in chess, right? It's a process, right? And the truth is somewhere in the middle. So queen to e2 is nice move for us over here. One of the possible moves. Castles. Again, d takes e5, d takes e5 just leaves white with space advantage. We're not scared of that. Castles, and here white played queen e4 in the game. So we're trying at some point to get bishop d3. So for example, bishop d7 was seen in the game, and here rook e1 slowly building attack is possible. Bishop d3 in these positions mostly will run into f5. Now if they play g6, we immediately place the bishop on h6. Right, rook e8, knight bd2. Maybe we can make something out of these weak dark squares and attack on the king side, right? But the move after bishop d3 to remember for black is really f5. Very typical, as after en passant we can take with the knight, and we're covering the h7 square, right? Otherwise the diagonal is blocked. So say f5, knight takes, queen has to go somewhere. And now a very nice idea is queen e5 and trying to get the queen to h5 where no kingside attack is possible. So for example, knight c3, queen h5, too many pieces of blacks are on the king side, so white doesn't have it. Rook e1, rook e8, and white now is playing against e6, but otherwise black is super solid. Right? So it's better to take a lot of times just slower approach, rook e1, and we're just building that attack, right? So who knows? a3, right, knight c3, then bishop d3 at some point, and slowly at some point we can even push the Hari maybe, yeah? And this is one of the most common positions to get to Sicilian as well. Hey Harim Das, nice to see you. How are you today? There's also a question about if it's possible after g6 to play h4, h5. Yeah, I think bishop h6 is a good inclusion, right? And in general, right, h4 would be fine. The only worry is if black has counterplay in the center, because h4 is just complete play on the flank. So if, like, I can answer your question with a question. If these don't lead, to counterattack for black, because as one side is playing on the side, the other should counterattack the center. So if these do not work, like, I don't know, knight maybe coming to b4, then you could play h4, h5, and it's legit, right? So these are the questions we have to answer, I guess. Right? Because h4, you're fully creating weaknesses, but going all in on the king side. So whenever you're trying to launch and questioning if kingside attack is good, ask if black has counterplay in the center, most importantly. And if you can't find any, then you go h4. If you can find something, then just take slow approach. And eccentric horse, this way you can evaluate h4 not only here, but in many other similar positions. Famous Stafford Gambit in Sicilian. Anything that objectively is not losing or terrible, you can play. Right? So just be prepared. Prepare the plans, know where your pieces go. And why not, right? We could be playing the if I'm prepared, e4, c5. Can I touch the pieces? Here we go. b4, let's go, right? If I'm fully prepared, because okay, objectively, but this is maybe too much, I would say, to play it over the board for too many games. One game, yes, against a weaker player, but if not, then either knight f3, c3, or knight c3, please, yeah. But for some online games, why not, right? Harim Das, there are already streams. You can find them on Chess24 on the Sicilian Defense from the black's perspective. Dear friends, our time today for today's stream is coming to an end. I will see you. I can tell you my scheduling, my stream scheduling. My streams are on Tuesdays at 14 CST and Fridays. Oops. Tuesdays it's 20 CST. I'm gonna give you the knowledge. Give me the schedule. Hello, Spacklintor. Hello. Yeah, you missed the stream, but you will be able to watch it on Chess24. That's good thing about saving these videos, right? Articom is asking about time management. I feel like often get too creative and waste too much time. There is a great book called Deadly Chess Sins, and One of the reasons for time troubles is not confident, right? So you're thinking too much a lot of times because you're not confident in your decisions. And the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? So you don't have to be overconfident and play fast, but you don't have to hesitate and check all the lines 10 times and run into time trouble. So this is my, say, general gem of knowledge that I can throw at you. So if you have problems with time managing, then most of the time you have problems with not being confident in your moves and not having trust in them. Of course, there could be many other reasons as well. Most importantly, you have to, chess-wise, if that's not the case, you have to feel the moments of critical positions. When there is a change of the pawn structure, change of the plans, transitioning from middle game to an end game, those are the times that are called critical positions, as they change the character of the position drastically. And during those times, you have to think longer, right? So there are like 3 to 5 critical moments in every game. And during those times, if you have 2 hours to start the game or 90 minutes, you have to dedicate like 10 minutes at least, right? Or so. And during the other times, it's like 2, 3, 5 minutes, yeah. Eccentric Course is asking, is playing Blitz good for your time management because it makes you good at playing fast time trouble? I don't think so, because then you're playing too fast and you develop the habit of going after the initiative very quickly. And sometimes it's good to play for those 1-2 move tricks. And in Blitz, you're just trying to play for the initiative most of the time, playing positions that are easier to play. Boom, pim, boom, it creates the threat. But if you're playing over the board, then what if it's easy to defend against that initiative and then you end up in worse positions, right? So I think Blitz is, in general, not very good for one's chess, especially if you overdo it, because if you're trying to learn new concepts, you can only apply them in slow chess at first. Only when you're good at something, you apply them in fast chess. Imagine we have a lesson now on C3 Sicilian Eccentric Course and others. Do you think you can really play this in Blitz now? You're gonna be out of book after move 5, I think, like, unless you have crazy memory. But if you were to play now 90-minute over the board game in C3 Sicilian, you would take time and you would remember, aha, I remember, if he takes on d4 early, right? Say an idea, for example, right? Okay, c3, right? And you're like asking, what's wrong with taking on d4 so early? Ah, I take on d4 and then I can bring the knight early on, right? So that's a drawback. And then maybe if knight is on c6, I can play d5. And you need time to remember those ideas at first once you learn something new. Once you apply that in slow games, you can start applying that faster and faster and faster, and that's how you get at Blitz. So if you want to get good at Blitz, get good at classical chess, right? It's maybe against the intuition, but that's how it is. If you're good at classical chess, you will be good at Blitz as well. That doesn't mean you should not play Blitz at all, but don't overdo it and play rapid, okay? Or over the board. Does that make sense, guys? Thank you, Gorav. Thank you very much for these compliments. Appreciate it a lot. Articom told you it could be confidence if you have time troubles, right? So if one is constantly finding some time trouble, then it could be, again, it's not the only reason, but a lot of times it's lack of confidence. Usually if you solve puzzles and it takes you more than 10 minutes, I think you should lower perhaps the level of the puzzle. Unless it's just complicate rich position where there are many puzzles in it, right? So when you're getting to 2000, we like to set up complicated positions where there are many tactics for both sides. And we could study it for an hour. But if it's just like regular puzzles from, say, a book of some sort, if it takes on average more than 10 minutes, I think it's too much. Sometimes it's okay. But I think on average, it should take you like 5, right, or so. By the way, guys, best tip for all of you who are below 1200 or so, do massive amounts of very easy puzzles. So go on and just solve very, very easy puzzles like mates in 2, right? And just do massive amounts of those. Or random, but super easy. That in an hour you could get like 100. And then once you recognize all of those patterns and you know them well, then you can transition to harder puzzles, where, remember, hard puzzles is just a combination of a lot of easier ones. But first you have to know all of those patterns, that if I give you a puzzle and it's 1-2 moves, right? Bam, 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 next, 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 next. And then we work on the harder ones and rare patterns, right? Applicable for all below 12 or 1500. Guys, I have done this with over 100 students in my life. It does work. Oh, Articum, you're 1950. So then those previous tips apply to you more. Thank you very much, Nikos. I'm happy that you enjoyed the stream. So it's already coming to an end. I have to end the stream. Thank you all for participating so actively. I'm welcoming to my stream on Friday. I'm streaming Tuesdays, Fridays. If you can, put a like on this video. I appreciate that a lot. Stay safe, my friends, and continue loving the game, all right? See you in the next